What's going on, everybody? It has been a while since I've done a podcast, made a video. Um, Office finally got reconstructed from the flood. Holidays hit, just a bunch of stuff. So haven't had really time to get on here and do anything, but things are finally getting back to normal. So you should be seeing some new content coming out, whether you're watching this on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Hey, if you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. We're super close to 500 at the time that this video is going to come out, and looking to break that 500 mark. So make sure you go subscribe, like the video, share it around, do all the things. Really appreciate it. I want to jump on here real quick because I want to talk about something that is very, very important to our well-being, and that is forgiving other people. Now, hey, if you're a client here at New Name Ministries and your counselor has given you the homework to watch the forgiveness video, you're at the wrong place. You need to go to the May You playlist, which is in this channel, find the forgiveness video there, watch it, and then you can come back and watch this one as well. But the video on forgiveness in the May You playlist on the YouTube channel is the one you're supposed to be at. It goes into a little bit more of a deeper dive. We're going to hit some high points today. But I want to get on here and do a video and talk about forgiving other people. It's one of the hardest things we ever do, but it's one of the most important things that we ever do. There's so much misconception regarding forgiving others. So it's something that we can't talk about enough. We need to be talking about it frequently. I will say this, and please don't let this scare you because there's nothing to be afraid of. But this is just observation after 24 years counseling people. When you start heading toward forgiveness, forgiving other people from your past, or even forgiving people that's in your present, you will have resistance. It's just so predictable. It's so common. And that resistance, I mean, I'm not saying that something tragic is going to happen in your life. It's not that kind of resistance. It's usually you get really, really busy, or you buy into the lie that you really don't need to forgive, or you already have, or all kind of things. But it is so common that when you head toward forgiveness, you will face resistance. The enemy, whether it's the enemy of the flesh that we walk around with, or the enemy that's outside of us, the enemy does not want us to forgive others because the freedom that comes is just tremendous. It is literally life-changing. I have seen miracles happen. I've seen miracles happen when people finally forgive. So, whatever the resistance is, does not want us to reach that level of freedom, and we will generally experience it as we head toward forgiving other people. Also, too, I don't know how this message is finding you today. I don't know where you are in your walk. But we in our counseling process, we always do forgiving others after we walk someone through identity. I say always, there's exceptions. There's times where the Holy Spirit's like, hey, let's do some forgiveness now. Hadn't talked about identity yet. That's fine. But typically, forgiveness comes after identity, after we know who we are in Christ. For a couple of reasons. We are now equipped with a deeper understanding of how much we are forgiven. And we'll get to more of that in a second. But when we really know we're forgiven and what we're forgiven for, forgiving others is easier. Also, after identity, there's a newfound confidence, a humble confidence to do what seems to be impossible, which is forgive other people that's hurt us. But so let's jump into this a little bit and just kind of talk through this. I've got some notes, but we're not going to script this one out a lot. I'm just going to kind of talk my way through it. Why don't we want to forgive? Well, first of all, what are we forgiving? We're forgiving those who have hurt us, those that have rejected us, those that have betrayed us, those that have offended us in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Nobody gets through this life without getting hurt. And then we store up all these hurts. These hurts kind of get stored up inside of us, and we carry them around, and they are affecting our lives in so many ways that we have no idea. Like, you have no idea how many of your issues are linked to unforgiveness. And we've heard all the cliches. Like we know that, when we don't forgive, we're only hurting ourselves. I can't remember who said it, but somebody's got the famous quote of unforgiveness is like drinking poison in hopes that the other person dies, right? So we know this. We know that it's better for us to forgive, but we don't want to. So many times we just do not want to forgive. And the reason is simple, because the unforgiveness seems to be serving us. Yeah, it seems to be doing something for us. Our false self wants to stay in control. And if we forgive others, we kind of start to feel like we're releasing that control. So we want to stay in control, and that control seems to be serving us somehow. So we want to hang on. We want to we want to feel superior to those that's hurt us. So somebody hurts you, and now they owe you because they hurt you. There's a debt that's created. Now they owe you, and now you feel superior to that person because they hurt you. And intuitively, you know that if you forgive them, the chairs are now level. And by the way, you're not superior now. You feel superior because you're holding on to this unforgiveness, but you're not. We're all broken messes. We are all ragamuffins just stumbling our way forward, right? So we're not superior to anyone, but we do have this false sense of being superior to those that's hurt us, and we just don't want to let that go. Forgiveness can give us a sense of entitlement, because that's what a wound does. A wound creates a debt. You hurt me, now you owe me. And if you owe me, I'm never broke. And if you owe me, then I'm entitled. And so a lot of people are walking around entitled, and because somebody hurt them, and they may not even be expecting something from the person that hurt them. For example, let's say somebody gets cheated on while they're dating, and they have not forgave, but now they feel like they're entitled to try to control their future spouse in a certain way, because they got hurt, and now they're entitled to be this way. We feel like we're entitled to blessings. We feel like we're entitled to good things. We feel like we're entitled to success and riches. And so much of that entitlement comes because we're holding on to unforgiveness. So it gives us a sense of being superior. It gives us a sense of being entitled. Another reason that we don't want to forgive sometimes is because anger just feels powerful. It really does. Anger feels a lot more powerful than the hurt. And so we want to hang on to that anger. There's some studies that has shown that when we hold on to unforgiveness and we replay that thing in our head of us getting back at, or us holding on to that anger, it actually lights up the same receptors in the brain as cocaine. So there's actually a high that can come by holding on to unforgiveness and bitterness and having that argument in your head where you always win. Actually, it's like a drug, and the brain can really get used to that. And if we forgive, we know that we're giving up a sense of power. It's false power. It's not real. It's the matrix. But we feel like that we're giving that up, and we feel more vulnerable. Like if I forget right now, I feel powerful, but if I forgive, then I feel more vulnerable, and people just don't like to feel vulnerable. Another reason why we don't forgive, again, this is why we don't, because unforgiveness seems to serve us. Another reason why we don't forgive is because unforgiveness gives us an excuse for our present attitude and behaviors. Yeah, I can act this way. I can have this attitude because that person hurts me. That person hurt me. And if I forgive that person that hurt me, then I no longer have an excuse for this current attitude or this current behavior. So, yeah, there's a lot of reasons why we don't forgive. But here's what we need to know: none of them's real. They're not serving us. They seem to be, but it's a myth. It's not real. And then, even though we may find some pleasure or some benefit to holding on to unforgiveness in the short term, in the long term, it's just kicking our butt in so many different ways. We can damage relationships. So so much of your stuff that you're bringing into your relationships right now is because you're holding on to unforgiveness. And if you choose to forgive, a lot of your relationships will probably immediately start to get better. There's all kind of physical stuff too, all kind of physical stuff. TMJ stuff that we hold, we hold a lot of tension in our jaw, back problems, IBS. There's all kind of stuff that is a result of us holding on to unforgiveness. It, Unforgiveness is literally eating up our insides all the time. And there is a solution. There is a freedom. There is healing. That's the best word. There is healing available. But it's hard. It's hard. In no way am I trying to make forgiving others sound easy, because it's not. Crawling on a cross is not fun. But that's how resurrections happen. So, yeah, damage in relationships. We become really easily irritated. We just ignore pains and problems. We rationalize, make excuses. We're dealing with depression. Again, all kind of physical ailments. All of these are a result of unforgiveness. So why do we hold on? And is it time for you to do what seems to be impossible, which is truly forgive? Has God been talking to you about this for a while? Like every time you hear somebody, you hear a sermon, or you hear a message, or you hear a song about forgiving others, you know that it's God. It's the Holy Spirit saying, hey, it's time. But we just want to keep fighting and keep fighting and keep fighting, even though we know the freedom that's going to come. Let's talk about some of the stumbling blocks that we might face as we head toward forgiving others. One stumbling block that's really important to realize is that a lot of people think that forgiveness and reconciliation is the same thing, and it's not. It's not. You can forgive someone and never reconcile. Now, let me say this. We don't want to hide behind that, because God is in the reconciliation business. He loves it when his children reconcile with each other. So, ultimate goal, yes, would be to reconcile, but sometimes reconciliation is not a good idea. It's just not. You don't need a relationship with that person. That person is still too toxic. And you need to draw boundaries. You need to set up some boundaries and say, no, you can't cross these boundaries. We're not going to reconcile, right? But that doesn't mean you can't forgive. You can forgive. Forgiveness is an act done by one person. Reconciliation takes movement on two parts. So we're not talking about reconciliation in this video. And a lot of times people believe that if I forgive, it means I have to reconcile. No, you do not. No, you don't. Forgiveness is an act done by one. It is something that you do inside of you, with you and God. It doesn't mean that you have to have a conversation with the person that you're going to be forgiven. Again, it may not even be a good idea. It may not be a good idea. That might be somebody from your past that needs to stay in your past. Or that might be somebody even in your present who the Holy Spirit really lets you know that, listen, you have forgiven, but a conversation is not going to be beneficial. So don't let the idea of I have to reconcile or I have to have a conversation with a person hinder you from walking toward forgiveness. Another reason, another kind of misconception regarding forgiveness is a lot of people don't head toward forgiveness because they kind of feel like they already have. And I get this a lot. So, like, I've taken a history, we've walked through some steps of the process, and now it's time to start doing some forgiveness. And I hear people say things like this: I don't need to forgive them because I don't feel angry toward them anymore. Well, that's great. It's great that you don't feel angry anymore, but not feeling angry does not mean that you have forgiven. Another one is, I'm able to put myself in their shoes. I'm able to understand why they did what they did. That might be a key step toward getting you ready to forgive, or it may be a byproduct of forgiveness, but that does not equal forgiveness. You can even say, hey, I've forgiven because I confronted the one who hurt me. Okay, I get that, but that still does not mean that you have forgiven. Another misconception is, hey, too much time has passed. It was just too long ago. I was a kid and now I'm an adult, or that was 3 marriages ago, or whatever, right? There's too much time has passed. And the idea that time heals wounds is not true. It's just not. Now, time can be a component of healing. It can be an element of, but time within itself doesn't heal anything. It's been said that time is a component in healing clean wounds, but dirty wounds over time just get infected. So too much time has passed. No, that don't mean that you have forgiven. You can also say things like, well, I'm willing to be nice to the person. I'm cordial. I smile at them. I say, hey, when I see them, great. That does not mean that you have forgiven at all. We try to forget, we think forgetting what happened equals forgiveness. That doesn't work either. We're able to pray for them. That's great too, but that doesn't mean that you have forgiven. Forgiveness is a choice. It's an action. It is something that we do. So again, all of these things can be misconceptions that can hinder you from forgiving others. Is, you kind of think you already have because of some of these things. But again, none of these things equal forgiveness. So when we forgive, the question is how? It's like, how do I do it? There's many different ways. Oh, by the way, before I go there, let me just say this. Sometimes forgiveness needs to happen with people who are no longer on this earth. Voices sometimes speak louder from the grave. So some people, I can't forgive that person because they're dead. Oh, yeah, you can. Because again, it's got really nothing to do with them. It's got nothing to do with them. It's all about what's going on inside of you. So what is forgiveness? Forgiveness is canceling a debt. It's first facing the offense, like you fully face it. You fully acknowledge what the person did. You don't justify what they did. You don't try to make excuses for what they did. You don't run from what they did, hide from what they did, try to ignore what they've done, but you face it. And that hurts. That really hurts. You let yourself feel, to the best of your ability, the pain and the anger and the hurt and the sadness of what they've done. And then you charge that person. And you may be saying, hey, Jason, I didn't think I had to talk to him. You don't. You can charge that person in your journal. You can write them a letter, and listen, this has been done, so don't. You can write them a letter they're never going to read. I actually know some people who wrote a forgiveness letter and then ended up mailing the thing. Probably not a good idea, right? So you can write them a letter, and in that letter is just the charge. This is what you've done to me. This is what you did. And it can be something big, or it can be something that, from most views and lenses could actually seem minor. It doesn't matter if it seems big or seems little. If it still hurts, if you're still carrying it around, if you know that you have not forgiven that person, then forgiveness is needed. So you fully face the offense, and then you charge that person. Write it down in a letter. And then you do what has been done for you, and you grant complete and total forgiveness. You can do it in a prayer. You can imagine that person is in a chair in front of you. You read them that letter. You charge them with what they've done. And then you say something like this from your heart. Let's just say the person you're forgiving is named John. John, I've charged you with what you've done wrong. But just as God has forgiven me, today I forgive you. I release you. You owe me nothing. You are free, and I am free. In Jesus' name. Use the power of your words in the presence of God to forgive. And it's a decision. You don't have to be there emotionally yet. You don't have to be there. There's nowhere you have to get. You just choose to do it. And then don't really trust your emotions afterwards. Like, you may still be angry the next day. Maybe not. You may have total peace and total freedom, but you may still be a little angry, but that's okay. Emotions are just emotions. They just are. You remember that day when, in the presence of God, you gave that person what you have been given, which is complete and total forgiveness. They owe you nothing. They are free, and you are free. And then genuinely wish them well. If there is somebody in your life that you do not genuinely wish well in every area of their life, you wish them love, you wish them happiness, you wish them success, you wish them all the greatness of the world. If you do not wish them well, fully wish them well, you have not forgiven. So choose to completely and fully wish that person well, and then pray for them. Pray for God to bless them. Pray for God to bless them. Another thing I want to talk about is this. Let's talk about compassion. Compassion is kind of like a cousin to forgiveness. It's going to be around. Now, compassion can come before forgiveness to get you ready to forgive, or it's for sure going to come after. So let's say you have a parent who really, really wounded you, and you finally get to the place where you fully face what they've done. You've charged them in your heart, and then you've given them what you've been given, which is complete and total forgiveness. You might find yourself wondering, what was their parents like? What went on in their life? Because hurt people, right? They hurt you probably because they've been hurt. So compassion, which means to suffer with, it means to let myself feel what they feel and to start having compassion on those that have hurt you. That's a level of grace that a lot of people just don't get to. Now, don't use that to prevent you from forgiving, right? So if your compassion came on the front end and you're like, I have compassion on that person, I know how that they were hurt, I know their childhood, so I don't need to forgive. No, that compassion on the front end is getting you ready to forgive. But oftentimes compassion comes on the back end. Listen, again, I've seen, and I'm not making any promises. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that miracles are going to happen in your life when you start forgiving other people, but I will tell you I've seen it in undeniable ways. I've seen people finally forgive, and most importantly, their heart gets unlocked and they're able to feel joy and peace and freedom on a deep level. But I will say this too, again, not to give any false hope. I've seen circumstances change. I've seen things happen in people's life after a result of them forgiving. And I'll just leave that right there. I don't want to go into details there, but I've seen some stuff happen that's absolutely undeniable. Sometimes I wish, if I ever got into like a conversation with an atheist, I want to start telling them counseling stories of, when this person finally forgave and this is what happened, because there's some stories I could tell. I can't for confidentiality reasons, but there's some stories that I could tell that are absolutely, you couldn't make it up. It's undeniable miracles. I've seen physical things. I've seen panic attacks stop. Again, not making any promises, but I've seen people who struggle with panic attacks, and then they finally forgive, and the panic attacks stop. I've seen, gut problems go away. I've seen back problems go away. I've seen chronic headaches go away. I've seen a lot of healing. A lot of healing happens when we just choose to give others what we have been given, which is complete and total forgiveness. We cancel the debt, and we truly, truly wish them well. We forgive others because it's who we are. We've been born again. We are one with Christ. He lives inside of us. Forgiving others It is our nature. It is what we do because of who we are in Him. It is what we do because of who lives inside of us. Let's talk about a couple more areas of forgiveness that can be difficult sometimes. Sometimes forgiving God, okay? That one can be tricky because if your theology is right, you know He's always good. And so, how can we forgive a God that's always good? I get that. I understand that. Um, but it's been said that all anger is either directly or indirectly toward God. And here's what that means. If God is all powerful, He could have started or changed anything that He wanted to. And because He gives us free will, He did not. But a lot of times we're holding on to unforgiveness with God. So sometimes, as weird as it sounds, we need to forgive God. We need to let God off the hook. That's the language I use personally when it comes to if I end up getting in a place with God where I'm angry or I'm frustrated or I'm confused, I can't understand why He's doing what He's doing. I just eventually have to let Him off the hook. I have to let Him off the hook. But I get honest first. You know, you can look at Psalms 13. David has some problems with God. He accused God of leaving him. He accused God of letting his enemies just, you know, triumph over him. He accused God of leaving him alone, David did. And so he told God that. He told him. And so, you know, if we have beef with God, if we have a problem with Him, tell Him. He's safe. He would much rather you bring your anger about Him to Him than for you to sit in bitterness. So if we need to let God off the hook and say, I trust you again, that's what we need to do as well. The last one I want to talk about is forgiving yourself. This can be the most difficult one. Some of you watching this or listening to this right now, you've already had the thought of, you know, Jason, I can do this for other people, but I can't forgive myself. I understand. I've been there. I've said the exact same things. The two approaches I want to take to this is one, do you really know you're forgiven by God? Do you really know that? I mean, your theology can be sound, but deep down in your heart, have you really received the truth that you are declared innocent, that you owe God nothing because somebody already paid for your debt? And are you living that way? Is that the song your heart sings? That you are completely and totally free from your past when it comes to God? Do you really believe that? Have you really trusted that? Have you really received that truth deep down? Because if you haven't, it's going to be hard for you to forgive you if you don't believe that God has fully forgiven you. Another way to look at forgiving yourself, and this is going to sound harsh, but I'm just going to say it. If you do fully understand that a holy, perfect, and just God has forgiven you, but you're not going to forgive yourself, you have to face the idea that that's some arrogance, that the God of the universe would forgive you, but you're not going to forgive you. Interesting, isn't it, to think about it that way? That's a special kind of pride. So that's what slapped me in the face when I was holding on to it, holding on to all my shame, holding on to the guilt, trying to make up for all the wrongs I've done. And when it finally dawned on me that who in the world do I think I am right now? that God's going to forgive me, but I'm not. And that can go for others as well. Like God's going to forgive you for all the things you've done, but you're not going to forgive that one person. So at the root of forgiving others, it all comes back to we are completely and fully forgiven. So if something in this message has struck a chord, if you know that, okay, I have not forgiven whoever, I would encourage you to do so. And I would also encourage you to think about this. You may not need to do it alone. There are times when I need another person in the room. A lot of times at this point, I can do it on my own. I can do it in a prayer. I use an empty chair. I write a letter. I can do it going down the road, set the person beside me, charge them, let them have it, forgive them. But there are still times when I need another brother with me. And it may be that that's what you need. You need a counselor. You need a friend. You need somebody in ministry. You need whoever. You just need somebody there with you. If that's the case, seek that person out and just be blunt. I got some forgiveness to do, and I would love for you just to be there to support me. If you feel like you can do it with just you and God, then I would encourage you to do it. Because again, the freedom that comes is absolutely remarkable. It's worth it. It is so worth it. All right. Thanks for tuning in. If you've enjoyed this, if this has been helpful, again, make sure you subscribe, like, share it around. See y'all next time.